afternoon. My name's Louisa. Good afternoon. My name's Louisa. I'm the Chief Exec here at Sheffield Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And welcome to our webinar this afternoon, which is one in a series of webinars that we have done with CADA for the local skills improvement plans. The local skills improvement plans have been led by Doncaster Chamber of Commerce in collaboration with Sheffield and Barnsley and Rotherham, and has placed employers at the heart of skills provision. And the purpose of the reports that have been produced by CADA and these webinars has been an opportunity to have a deep dive into a sector, to put some stories and some meat on the bones around some of the data that we already know, to enable us to feed back to the provider community to help shape course provision and skills provision for the betterment of the region. So as I said, this is a series of deep dives, and we will pop the link in the chat so that you can see the previous reports and the previous webinars. So they're all there on the website. So if you want to have a look at any of the previous webinars and reports, then please do so. And we will be putting today's webinar report on there as well. Just to stress that these reports have been compiled with interviews from a range of different organisations, not all chamber members. So we do work in collaboration with other organisations to ensure that we get a breadth of voices. And I'm really pleased to say we'll also have some employer perspectives here today. So we're going to hear from Jack and Carl at CADA, who'll talk us through the report. And we'll then have some employer perspectives from Dr. Sam Chapman, who is the co-founder and director of The Flow, and Guy Kramer, who is the MD of Cyber Intelligence and Advisory Limited. And we'll then have an opportunity for some Q&A. You can raise your hand to ask questions, or you can pop them in the chat, whatever you prefer. And then we'll be coming to Sean at Doncaster Chamber, who will just tell us about the next steps and the last webinar in our series and our last report. I think that's everything from me. So I'm now going to hand over to Carl and Jack, and I'm going to pop myself on mute. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Carl Dalgleish. I'm a director at CADA Research. We are an economic development consultancy based in Park Hill, Sheffield, and in Gateshead. And I'm joined by my colleague Jack, who helped do a lot of the heavy lifting on this report. Really delighted to be here today. This is a report about a technology, so it's a bit different to some of the previous sector reports that we've done. And it's looking at a bit about the AI market, what artificial intelligence is, a bit about what it means to employers, and it's the sixth in a series of employer insights. I suppose the idea is to get current employer knowledge and understanding by having in-depth chats with people at various stages of AI adoption to just understand where they're at with it, really. We designed the questionnaire, as we have for all of these, with providers. So we asked providers, well, what would you like to hear about? And we sense checked it with businesses and stakeholders like Sheffield Digital. So to be honest, they really do steer us because they're the people that live and breathe this stuff. The idea is that we look at adoption and future skills. We spoke to quite a few firms. I think this was one where we had really good coverage, 45 firms, and there is a list of those in the report. One-to-one interviews. Clearly, they can't represent, every sector, and they only offer a snapshot here and now. So some people are real kind of, living and breathing AI, whereas others are just thinking about it or a bit agnostic. So quite a range of companies. And the referrals were made right the way from across South Yorkshire. We did work very closely with Sheffield Digital, whose reach goes beyond the Sheffield boundaries, to work with companies within their membership. And I think that really adds some extra insights into the report. So it is a huge market. And when you look at the economic projections, they are quite scary. The scale and pace of change in this sector is, quite astronomical. It's quite interesting as well. When we spoke to Sheffield Digital, they said, this is part of a journey. We've had sort of automated learning for a long, long time, over the last 70 years or so. And AI is just part of a rapid evolution through machine learning and deep learning through to the present day establishment of what we call generative AI, which can create original content in response to user requests. So generative AI is already beginning to be superseded by what's called agentic AI, which can autonomously make decisions and pursue really complex goals with limited supervision. So the future is quite exciting for AI. We say in the report it's transforming how we live and work. It's sort of affecting all of our lives at the moment. It provides businesses in South Yorkshire with some pretty groundbreaking opportunities. And I suppose one of the real strengths is the versatility of applications that it can bring. Already in my industry, it's improving efficiency, it's automating routine work, and it can uncover insights in almost any industry. So all of you will be working alongside AI at one point or another. So massive market, been around a while, it's constantly developing are the key messages from the front bit there of the report. There's some infographics there just describing that journey that I talked about before we get into what the employers think. There's some quotes in the report. I've picked some of them out for you. I'm not going to read them out. I'm just going to give you a chance to absorb them and just shut up for a minute while you take them in. Really just describing some of the applications of AI. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, we needed an image that tried to portray the changing. If you look at Shutterstock and the images available, there's some really quite a range of images. I suppose what we wanted to try and convey with this image is we're probably at the prompting stage now, and lots of people are sort of dipping their toes into the generate stage of AI. Some people prefer images to text, don't they? So we like to put a couple in. So the first section then really is about adoption, regulation, and ambition. So it's got widespread integration across really loads of sectors. And the firms that are using it really do vary from what we call digital natives that are really comfortable with it to other service and manufacturing industries, just regular industries that are thinking about it. Now, adoption rates do vary considerably. We call some of them pioneers, and others are sort of current or potential adopter followers. And if you look in the report, we've identified 5 broad categories. So there's a very small number of creators of AI infrastructure. There's developers of AI products. There's AI service providers, which are becoming more commonplace. And then there's just current adopters or followers of AI products or services. And then we've got a final category, which is potential adopters. Some of them are like vegan AI people, not following it at the moment, remain to be convinced. So it's quite interesting to hear the different perspectives. And indeed, their experience of AI did vary considerably, ranging from adopting products and services to try and get more efficient processes to playing a much more fundamental role where AI is front and center. We've got companies creating AI bespoke products and infrastructure, building large language models, developing pipelines and automated platforms, and linking up a lot of their business processes. So we're moving from a world where businesses are run on Excel spreadsheets and accounting software to platforms that are much more sophisticated and can anticipate what employers need. Now, the handful of non-adopters that I talked about would like to understand more, or they felt they had more pressing priorities. But do bear in mind, this was a bit of a selective sample. So we did want some companies that were really deep in AI. So it's probably not representative. There probably are more reticent adopters out there that do need convincing. So there's definitely an appetite for knowledge sharing, and people would like to learn more and deepen their understanding. And nearly everybody said that, whatever level of kind of adoption they were at. We asked people about whether they had policies to regulate its use. Often they were just linked into their wider company policies, although many said they were looking to adopt a formal policy for AI use. But it's worth stressing that generally people were quite open for their teams to explore AI. I'll be interested to hear what people's experience has been. And these frameworks really were designed to ensure it's unethical and in line with regulation and protects company data. That's the main sort of concerns. So there's some really good practice in the sub-region which could be shared with firms looking to develop policies. So most employers are moderately optimistic about it. They think it can improve efficiency and productivity. For some, it will play a key role in sales and marketing applications. Thank you. Could we have the next one, Jack?
Was it not changed over for you, Cole?
Don't think so, no.
That's okay, I can pick up these bits. So in terms of the AI leaders that we spoke to, the sort of those at the forefront of the sector, they sort of anticipate contributions being in the sort of product service development space and data analysis and predictive insights, which was sort of around the coding platforms, the software and hardware. A few were a little bit more cautious, like Carl mentioned, in terms of that reticence, despite the sort of inevitability of it and how much it's taking over sort of broader industries. I mean, in terms of sort of AI tool usage and application skills, these were mentioned quite frequently in the discussions we had. So around the awareness and ability to use AI software effectively, understanding how to prompt and guide AI outputs, which I think is probably something that our speakers will pick up a little bit more on, especially in terms of those firms who are not yet utilizing it more broadly. I think there's maybe a little bit of a gap in understanding from what they want out of AI and how to get it and how the software itself is going to achieve that goal. In terms of sort of the more specific technical AI skills, we mentioned like the software development, programming, etc. Those sort of leading firms requiring these, they're quite fundamental. And a couple of employers we spoke to were looking more for sort of sector specific or functional AI use. In terms of specific AI related roles, these weren't as common from the sort of employers that we spoke to, sort of jobs with specific AI responsibilities, but there were a few that were considering this on the horizon. In terms of sort of learning, employees who took a learning through experimentation approach towards AI were most valued. Teams who test the waters themselves, trial new softwares, new ways of working was something quite well received by most employers. And obviously employers like staff to keep up to speed with AI trends and sort of generally cultivating a internal knowledge sharing system and sort of best practice were the traits that were seen as most crucial to keep pace with a sort of the technology that's advancing so rapidly that curriculum development sometimes finds hard to keep up with. So we've got a few quotes there, like Carl said. Obviously, I'll just leave them on the screen for a minute. A quote from an employer around AI usage, one about AI regulation, and one around sort of ambitions for AI use going forwards. And then some more examples from some employers where they cited how AI is being used within their business currently in terms of drone platforms and legal management systems as well. Certainly law firms are looking forward into terms of AI use and how it can improve efficiencies within their businesses. So we also looked at the skills pipeline, which we touched upon a little bit there in terms of sort of apprenticeships, recruitment, skills gaps, etc. So for certain technical or senior roles, industries such as engineering and data science qualifications are still essential for those roles, but the more routine use of AI simply just requires an understanding of how to use the tools and also how to use those tools effectively, the sort of prompts that are required, the softwares to be used to get the most out of it. This obviously requires problem solving, curiosity with digital skills, and interest in using it outside of the role. From sort of a skills perspective, that type of requirement is probably quite well suited to courses with on-the-job training, such as apprenticeships. New AI models and technologies do make it difficult for qualifications and training to keep pace. So I touched upon that before. Someone said to us that by the time a curriculum has been developed for AI, it's about 10 years out of date because of how rapidly the technology is advancing. So there's certainly a piece of discussion around how we keep pace with the technology as it progresses. We also touched upon recruitment, so traditional interview techniques may not be as suitable for candidates to demonstrate those technical capabilities with AI. Task-based roles in recruitment is more the prominent usage by those we spoke to in order to sort of demonstrate those skill sets. And as I mentioned before, there weren't few sort of wholly AI roles being advertised. Employers are looking more at upskilling current employees and embedding AI into job descriptions and roles themselves, and seeing how AI can enhance current roles rather than producing new roles within industries. We did ask businesses sort of the hardest to fill vacancies. Now, this applied specifically to AI roles, but also just on a more broader scale. These have tended to be the sort of specialist technical areas, particularly within engineering, where candidate pools are limited and in some cases shrinking as well over recent years. There were sort of a good degree of confidence from the businesses we spoke to that future generations would enter industry with a broader understanding of AI, given its sort of the fact that it's permeating into a lot of areas of our lives and a willingness to work with it as well. It's something that's a lot of interest at younger generations. But we did speak to a couple from sort of recruitment firms, and they noted the fact that AI generated CVs is quite a problem nowadays in terms of recruitment. The provision of work experience, real life experiences is obviously a priority to sort of showcase what the sector can offer. And there is an openness to engaging with providers and sort of some interest in engaging with young people with special educational needs as well and disabilities through outreach activities. Concept of role models to that effect was obviously frequently mentioned from a technology adoption point of view. And AI is obviously playing a more integral role in industry education partnerships, which is quite key. So there's some interest in hiring AI specialized graduates in the future. And some of the businesses we spoke to already had existing strong partnerships with education providers, some which were AI specific, such as STEM ambassador programs, AI roundtables. But some of the employers did sort of want education systems to adapt and shift towards teaching AI more routinely within curricula, which we are seeing in some courses, but not largely on the whole. And again, a few quotes here from a company around sort of hard to fill vacancies. Sort of that sector specific, domain specific understanding could be a bit of a barrier. One around the inspiring the next generation piece in terms of the importance of real life exposure, how they're sort of learning in a formal setting, and then one around the provider engagement that I just finished with. So one obviously company there looking to build a relationship with university and bridge that link between industry and academia. So from sort of a training provisions point of view, we obviously spoke to businesses about how training is done within their business currently and how it might be going forwards from an AI standpoint. So the sort of availability and visibility of AI support varies quite widely depending on the people we spoke to. So, but generally people did say awareness is quite low from where they would go. It's a bit fragmented, difficult to navigate, again, due to the sort of specificity of the skills needed and the sort of the rate at which it's evolving. So there are pockets of expertise, but this is quite dependent on internal knowledge, sort of self-directed learning and personal networks rather than easy to access, clearly signposted support systems. So I think for sort of the providers and brokers, there's an opportunity in being visible going forwards in offering guidance that's also sector specific to the companies that need it and sort of product agnostic to sort of present it in easy, understandable, accessible ways for those companies in particular who are quite keen to embed it but currently aren't and don't necessarily know how to go about doing so. So we've talked broadly the whole way through about trying to keep pace with AI and how it's not sort of an ongoing journey and how fast it's moving and how hard it can be to decide where to focus on. So the volume of information poses a bit of a challenge in terms of how daunting that can be. Recurring theme, as we can see there, is that while the technical skills do matter, that critical thinking piece and problem solving are seen as more important, and thinking broadly how to use the tools more effectively and implement them differently is quite a key piece. So there's a clear role for organizations to act as trusted guides, so to offer opportunities to different generations to sort of share that knowledge, build confidence in workforces. Some of the sort of best received methods of that were sort of short workshops or hackathons were quite prominent. A lot of people I spoke to had taken part in those recently, and sort of fail fast, so to speak, pilots to help develop strategies around sort of what works in cases of best practice. The sort of recruitment for AI positions was more weight on attitude and curiosity, as we've mentioned, as well as the technical skills, but that sort of ability to work with the software and sort of those employments. Some did offer a bit of baseline training on AI or CPD for some staff, but there was room to do more of that. And there is obviously an openness to engaging with every training format, as long as it's practical, sector, role specific, but making sure that it's framed around specific and practical outcomes. So short focus courses appeal to teams the most. They need learning they can sort of act on straight away. And obviously a single approach won't reach everyone. So we need a mix of learning modes that allow people to choose what suits them. And then confident adopters of AI often see themselves as contributors as much as learners. So in some of the sector reports we've done, it's been about the provider engagement, but some of these firms at the forefront of their AI use quite keen to sort of share their insights and work with other companies in the sector and more broadly across the sub-region. So again, just going back to sort of the tools and resources, tailored online tools and resources are quite highly valued. Sort of reinforce live sessions, but modules and training they can go back to in their own time, which helps on constraints around time capacity. So employers still look for those in-person encounters where possible and networking opportunities, but failing that, sort of easy to access, accessible, rewatchable modules are very helpful. But if there are introductions to keynote speakers, experts, advisors, if other companies can connect with each other, that was highlighted by most of the people we spoke to. But employers do want structured help for senior teams to help with that setting of direction, and also empowering internal champions to share learning across the organization. While there was a lot of good practice around internally developing new ways of working and sharing them with each other, if there was a company champion or someone to direct and navigate that learning, that would be potentially a key takeaway going forwards. But there is a willingness to engage with all the sort of potential support offers in the future, provided obviously that there's a high quality of delivery and there's a clear link to the business outcomes and what they're trying to achieve. And again, we've got a few more quotes here around some perspectives on the current AI landscape in terms of what might be more helpful for businesses going forwards, how we pick up that key challenge of keeping pace, and then some sort of AI best practice around one firm that built in time specifically for independent research to help people try new tech and then show each other within the business how it can help, how it can improve efficiencies going forwards. Carl?
Thank you. So future outlook and some of the risks and barriers then. A lack of knowledge really we found was the biggest primary barrier for AI adoption, how to use the different functions and models and how they can enhance business processes. So of the 40 odd companies we spoke to, 1 in 3 would welcome tailored support highlighting how AI could improve their operations or productivity. The adoption barriers, I suspect you'll be familiar with. Some of them are quite traditional barriers, like sectors with older workforces, skepticism amongst some employers. We can do skepticism in South Yorkshire quite well in some sectors. Market uncertainty, lack of confidence of the business returns, and gaps in specialist supports. They're sort of key barriers. There are risks that include data security that people have serious concerns about, including potential hacking or data breaches or the perceived inaccuracy of content. Some people are worried about job losses, which could lead to low workplace morale. So there are genuine risks and fears out there. I guess you don't always hear the success stories as much as the risks. So maybe that's a message for providers is to articulate where there have been amazing successes in the adoption of AI. So those that were involved in the development of it really recognized the value of undertaking bias mitigation measures and critically assessing AI generated content. That's something that came up quite a lot. They recognized that they needed to accelerate their policies and regulatory frameworks. As noted earlier, the adoption of AI software is much more likely when it's can demonstrate business specific training and AI in action rather than generic training. So they'd like to see training providers consult with industry bodies frequently to gain a deeper understanding of how to tailor that content to meet their needs. And further demystification of AI and signposting really is needed in South Yorkshire to help adopt applicable solutions. Now, a few people suggested support that like to help them adopt AI, and that would certainly be welcomed by some. Examples included subsidized training grants, assistance with purchase agreements, and links to provider and creator deals to make it much more financially viable. People talked about the potential role of the Chamber and other business organisations as impartial conveners and signposters to help businesses that want to create or develop AI services. And the licensing fees and things are quite expensive. So pooling of resources and infrastructure would certainly be welcome. to enable new entrants to help keep pace with some of the faster developing firms. I think we've got some quotes there as well, haven't we, Jack? And that was an image to try and convey some of the risks. Just summary points then. So despite some concerns, there's definitely an appetite for AI adoption in South Yorkshire. Many additional opportunities were identified here for training, building on the services of those already providing AI to businesses in the sub-region. We think that would help consolidate the benefits of AI adoption and result in significant outcomes for those looking to adopt AI more routinely. We think the sub-region's well placed to adopt the potential of AI, and it's really important that we raise the awareness of its uses alongside meaningful opportunities for training, and particularly supporting some of the smaller firms to keep pace with some of these technological innovations. Thank you so much for your attention. So we'll continue to disseminate these sector insights. The slides are available. The phase 2 topic, that we have one more topic to go, Louisa, and that's on veterans, and that will be in another couple of weeks on veterans returning to the workforce. So completely different topic, but maybe of interest for some. I think now we're going to hand over to Sam and Guy. So I shall to you first, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. That's great. Lots of things that was struck out for me, but I'll save them for the Q&A bit. But yeah, I'm surprised at the lack of confidence in business returns, and I suppose all the more reason to highlight the good case studies and share the good best practices and the good examples, because as a region, if we actually get on a front foot with this, it's got huge potential, hasn't it, in terms of productivity gains. Yes, so we have got Dr. Sam Chapman, Guy Kramer. I'm not sure if Guy is here actually. So if you are here, if you could just let me know, because I can't see you and the participant list. So we are going to go to Sam first, and Guy, you can send me a message if you are. But Sam, yeah, I just wondered if we could ask you to just bring a bit of an employer perspective. I know obviously you've got quite a technical expertise in this as well, but yeah, just to help kind of bring that to life a little bit, and then we'll take sort of questions and comments after you, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thanks,
so for those that don't know, the Flow's a business that just analyzes data. So we analyze mobility data. So we're obviously using some intelligence and AI in there, but what's more important is that we don't just do it for that one central part of our business, we adopt it across the business. And I think this is where people don't necessarily realize the extent of where AI can be helpful to their industry. You can use it to look at competitors. You can use it to help build marketing material. You can use it to help filter information that you need for business purposes. It can help it with invoices, help with financial products. You can help with anything that you need as a business function. There is AI support out there that can help an organization. So AI applies to all industries, and it applies to all sectors of those industries where AI can have a gain. And the more you start to explore it, the more you realize its potentials. There are risks, as has been mentioned, particularly around data protection, privacy, and copyright in particular. So how you use it, you have to be aware of. But the thing is about using AI, it's about following standard business practice, which is about continuous improvement. So you embrace it within an organization, you work out where it works well, and you evaluate it, test it before you deploy it, and improve upon it. And you follow an operation that's very similar to ISO kind of quality standards that you may have or run as business processes. Even if you've never got involved in ISO standards, it follows that same kind of principles. So getting AI within your business follows that particular aspect. And if people need guidance of where to start in that, looking at standards like 42001, which is an ISO standard specifically for managing AI, gives you guidance on the policy you need, the framework for how you improve, how you do checks as a business. I'm not saying you need to follow those standards and get accredited to it in any way, but it's a good shortcut to work out how could I embed that safely within my business operations? How can I fit that within my company, that then allows you to try and work out how does that work for me? Which parts can I actually embrace within a company to try and apply AI to particular tasks? And you can have great success with it. We've had some very weird successes in terms of putting in place AI monitoring, just in terms of the speed at which data arrives to us, to see if we could see issues. And we discovered from that frequency of information coming was actually a value. When we started to see anomalies, we could actually use that information to inform. We're now supplying that information to turn on and off power stations in the UK. That's not what our business was built for, but we're finding other uses for our data from the simple application of AI to gather new intelligence and new insight from the data that you've got, which creates business opportunity. So it's not about the fear of creating new capability that then might lose jobs. It's about creating new capability that allow you to make more money and provide services better and have better products. Having to put care around them is very important. And as has been mentioned all the way through this is what practices. And a lot of people have fear of this, about where you would put things in place. Is it going to put the wrong sort of data out? Is it going to have an answer that I'm going to be liable for because it's going to be wrong? Should always think about human oversight over building technology and in where technology gets deployed within a business. And if you start with those principles and try and work through how that might help and influence your business, you can do it any part of your business. It's just about where would it help a task? How can it improve it? And there was a number of quotes in the presentation today, and also wider within the report, that do exemplify this, of people saying, actually, it's just part of business, and it should be. AI is something that we should all embrace as just a tool, like we use Excel, like we use other things that help us take business further forward. So, quick intro. I don't know if, Lou, you have specific questions or areas you'd like me to focus on around here, but I just thought that was a good kind of introduction to AI from my perspective of how other firms really should start to see how to embrace it. It's about culture more than the technology itself.
Thank you, Sam. Really helpful. And I think you're absolutely right. It's that spirit of continuous improvement. And sometimes it's like progress, not perfection, isn't it? It's start and keep refining. I have a question, but let me put it out to the participants on the call. So if you want to either pop your question in the chat or pop your hand up, I'm just going to flick through the screens and see if there's anybody with a pressing question. I don't have one at the moment. So my question is for you, Sam, actually, as a business owner, the employees in your organisation, have you put them through specific training in how to use AI, or have they just been self-taught, or has it been a mixture of both? How have you made sure that they have got a good basic knowledge and enough skill to apply it well?
Yeah. We're fortunate enough that we have a number of technical staff that are quite conversant with AI, built AI systems there. So embedding that into culture is somewhat easier for us in some ways, but that's not true for all our staff. We have admin, finance roles, sales roles that don't have that background, don't have that understanding. What you need to actually make sure is that everyone's aware of where it adds value, where it's useful, if there's a risk, how you've addressed or mitigated that risk to allow its use. And as long as you start embedding that kind of thinking around how you embed technology into a business, you end up having a continuous improvement. And you can a problem that many people face is they just start, but they don't really know what they're doing. So they start by, let's just try and put something in. And you've got to be aware enough to say, don't put my IP, my protected data, classified data, into an open LMM without protection. Know that you're using the right tools, a tool that will actually make sure that, one, you maintain that data in its protection. It means that you end up having no threat of copyright in output. So there's different tools that you can use. But look what's good in your industry. What's there? Jack, I noticed your hands up.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you a question, Sam, which you've kind of mentioned there, which is for those sort of businesses who haven't used AI before and are just sort of thinking about dipping into it, as you sort of noted as you were talking there. How important is it that they understand the fundamental process of AI itself? And the sort of example I use, which I know we mentioned when we spoke to, is I'd spoken to an employer for a different study who'd been really keen to use AI for their website in terms of product descriptions. So it basically just asked ChatGPT to produce all these product descriptions for, and it had done it, and it was fantastic. And what they found out later is all it's simply done is scrape the product descriptions from a competitor's website, and they hadn't realized. So I suppose for those businesses, and you sort of alluded to it, how important is the understanding of how the software is actually producing the output for them? If they're keen to use it, they know what they want, but they don't know the actual path to get there.
I think the important thing to note is that all AI systems are built on training data. And when you get a very specific question, it's got less training data from which to build its response. So if you are saying, I'm researching this new area of which I'm one of the only businesses in the world researching, and try and pull out that information, it's going to pull back information where it thinks is the best sources to try and inform the answer that it gives you, which may come from a competitor's website or just reiterate what you've already got on your own. So in terms of the information, you've got to think about what's out there in the world. And you can use that in different ways. I use it personally for where AI doesn't answer well. When it gives you gobbledygook, it's an area that actually other people haven't answered. It's an innovative area. And I use it to guide business and innovation by helping to inform me. The important thing to know is that what are things trained upon? What is the output? And is it your output? When you use an AI system and you're using it from prompts, you are the generating agent of the output in terms of its copyright. But if that is derived from a singular source elsewhere and reiterates, like the product descriptions you just mentioned, then it can be very problematic. So you've got to be very careful, and it's why I made sure that I mentioned earlier human oversight. You need it at the point of saying, is this a sensible bit of processing to do? Am I handing out personal data into the query itself, in which case a bad idea? Am I putting out protected secrets into someone else's model, and they're going to reuse that in training? And you don't want it in the public domain. Again, not necessarily good for the business. So as long as you put in place some fairly basic rules and instruction to staff, that can be handled via a simple policy and a very short piece of training to try and encourage the right sort of usage of AI systems. It is better to gain productivity from employees by empowering them to use the latest tools, as long as they adhere to those basic rules. So making sure people are educated on those basic aspects is important. But if you are afraid of that, you can use internal AI tools that only work on your own data, that only work internal to your system, that allow you to put protections in place. So you can use certain tools that will not be like ChatGPT, which is worldwide. It consumes every bit of data you throw at it. You can put in place tools that have terms and conditions that what you put into it doesn't get reused in training. The outputs that come from it are protected within your firewall of your company. You can reuse in certain ways because of the training material that they've used. So there are different tools for different jobs, but you'll never know them all. Because there are hundreds and thousands of these tools. There are tools that combine AI tools together. You can get one tool to produce some output to feed into another one to generate something else. So following in the early steps of agentics type working, you can already tool chain outputs from AI to process information, put it into a different format, have another AI do something else off the top of it, and produce another output. So you can start to put these things together. That's a lot more complicated for most users at this point. The important thing is people get used to where they think it might be useful technology for their business. So ask questions that you would normally go and ask someone of an AI tool before you go and see them. Actually, you might get half the answers you need. It saves business time. Actually, you start getting a view of actually what's the kind of typical answer. The specialism I need is this. And it helps you focus people's time and resources better and allows you to focus on things that are needed. So I've seen more questions coming up. I've probably said too long an answer there, so let's move on. Where are we up to? We have... To get the best out of AI, we have to ensure you use the right commands. Is there an idiot's guide to help in starting that point? I would say, no, there isn't. I think it's best to just put in a command, and if it doesn't work, you give back extra information. You say, actually, I didn't really mean that. I only meant UK examples, or I only meant this, or could you refer to that more from a legal perspective? AI is very good at rephrasing an answer the more input you give to it, and the better it gets at responding to you to actually give you the answers you need. So don't think you have to learn a whole set of commands beforehand. Just reflect that the first answer that comes back may not be perfect. Think about refining the guidance you give it, and prompt it until you get what you need. And it will be different for different industries and different business, the types of information you need to feed into AI systems to get back the desired response you need. But the important thing is just to start. There's no such thing as a right command for AI. It's all about language formation and co-occurrence of words. So you in your relevant industry will know best the nature of that language that describes the task that you have. Describe it in the way that you think makes most sense, but evaluate the answer, human oversight again, and then say, actually, no, can you refine that answer? Can you give me a better answer, a better response? How can I better make that useful for my business? And over time, you pick up the right sort of commands. Hopefully that's helpful. Two other questions following. Are there any specific issues relating to South Yorkshire, relating to AI use and industry structure, educational institutions? And I would say, yes, there are. In the UK in general, the UK is very well positioned for AI. Leading in the world is China and America, and the UK is leading, however, within Europe. There is a lot of AI skills here, and there is also a lot of AI interest, and we are more advanced than other countries in terms of AI adoption. So the UK is in a good place to develop technology that can be globally deployed, and we should not be afraid to do it whilst we have this advantage. In South Yorkshire, there is a lot of AI training that goes on, particularly within the two universities in Sheffield and Sheffield Hallam. Both of them have AI courses across a whole range of different things. There's lots of skills within the region being generated. So in terms of the educational aspects, I think we're reasonably well positioned for that high level part. The entry level and general population level amongst the community and the digital literacy, however, and the wider population is not so good. And in this area, it's where we need to try and help people, encourage people, and get people familiar with the technology as much as we can. And the more that we can do that, the better that we will have a generalized population or industry or businesses that are familiar with AI. And part of that comes down to knowledge sharing. Events like today that might help someone. You might pick up a small piece of information from what someone's saying here, but it's about that sharing of information and making sure that other people are happy to talk to each other about their experiences with it, where it's useful for them. And particularly in industries that are like the manufacturing sector, for instance, it's seen as harder to adopt. They've got antiquated IT systems. They're in factories with machines that don't quite talk in modern language, and they've been there for decades because they can't replace the machine because the machine's the fundamental component. How do you use AI in that setting? There's actually lots of things out there you start to monitor, you get the data and you start feeding it in, you can start to see where things improve. But it can apply everywhere, but there are some areas where it becomes harder to deliver. And manufacturing sector is one of those, but there are many firms within the region that look at actually putting AI into the manufacturing sector that are based here, that need to be talking more to those specific sectors within the area to try and advance that in general. Seeing the next one, there's lots of training online, and you've done this off paid courses in AI. In terms of wondering what is the public policy role in reflecting on this. I think in terms of training available for AI, there's lots of different levels of training. There's training in terms of the regulatory aspects. There's training in terms of understanding its fit into various tools and technologies. There's training for how to code AI, how to build AI, how to extend it in terms of adding new features on top of existing platforms or entirely building new platforms. So there's a whole series of different sorts of training available and set at different levels for different types of individuals. I would just encourage people to get as familiar with what's useful for them. If you are a business that's possibly considering AI, don't necessarily go out and learn how to build your own LLM, because it's the likes of very big companies that are typically based in a different part of the world with very large IT infrastructure that's going to do that. Think more about actually what can I build on top of other people's solutions? What can I embed within my company? What's the training that's right for us as an organization? Is probably more useful, I would suggest. Something else coming up? I'm just going to keep answering questions until someone stops.
Sam. No, it's fantastic. Yeah, you've got the questions from Sean actually. So probably Sam, maybe you have an answer, and maybe also Carl and Jack from your interviews would have a perspective on this one. But this is AI advances at unprecedented speed, but the skills system is slow due to funding and structural constraints. How can South Yorkshire rapidly develop the skills businesses need to drive growth in this area?
I can give my perspective if you want. I think the thing that you fundamentally need to teach is the ability to adapt in that learning. So, because whatever tools you use during that, it's not that tool by the end of a course is going to be necessarily the same tool that someone wants in industry. It's the ability to apply and problem solve and apply that using technological solutions. So can you take training material? Can you use a tool to try and do something with it? When it doesn't quite work, how do you put in that human oversight? How do you steer and adapt that tool? What techniques do you use to try and do it? You can apply those across multiple different technologies. And it's building that general familiarity, which I think is a very useful skill and tends to be embedded in certain sort of research courses and also computing courses, but not necessarily wider. So if you're trying to apply AI in, say, history or churches or geography or something, or they don't tend to have that same background. So I think there's a way of trying to say, how do we embed those skills, particularly into other sectors? So things like manufacturing, for instance, the digitization grants and things that are going on at the moment that are out there to try and aid productivity can help this. So there are a number of things out there where people can start to explore how they can embed those functional and technical skills right, but it has to be led with what their industry is and what their industry needs at the right level for the industry, because you may not want to get into every bit of AI. You just need to start the journey towards it, work out what works for you as a company, and then continuously improve. Hopefully that's helpful.
I can just add a little bit there.
Yeah.
I can add a bit, Lou, if that's helpful. I mean, what employers told us really was from the independent training providers, they're really interested in how they're working with people entering the labour market. So demystifying skills for those that just have not had any experience of it. And equally, from the employer side, it's offering meaningful encounters. So when we have work experience people, for instance, we will give them experience of AI, how it's used in our industry. So it's not completely unusual for them. And I do wonder if there's an appetite from businesses to have more sector-based AI understanding, whether that's creative industries and producing content, and so that curriculum designers actually work much more closely with industry representatives about where the industry is going and how the learners of tomorrow can embrace some of the technologies that Sam's talked about. We've got lots of really good practice around the AMRC and companies within Sheffield Digital. It feels like we need to propel some of that a little bit, tell some of those good stories, and perhaps even have some specific measures to boost AI within some of those more advanced clusters. Just looking at, some of the sector studies we've done, clearly there's the sort of advanced manufacturing sector and the creative tech sectors quite far on in terms of adoption, particularly the advanced manufacturing, whereas some of the foundation industries that we found lots of experimentation but less routine adoption. So within finance and professional services, leisure and culture, there's all sorts of applications and untapped potential there. So I guess that's a challenge for providers to try and keep up with some of those technologies and think about how they might embed them more routinely and work with employers to do that.
Thank you. We've got a question in actually from Rachel Walker. Do you envisage it replacing jobs such as the creative jobs, designers, videographers, or simply enhancing jobs?
I can take this one. I can say that some roles may get decreased in number. and in particular around certain creative jobs and designers. But what it will do is it will power them to do an awful lot more. There will be a change in certain areas whereby AI completes what is and has been a human task to a sufficient quality without much human oversight, meaning it can increase productivity of one individual to do the job of what used to be 5 or 10 or more. However, what it does also do is it creates new capabilities, new roles where people can use their creative talents in new ways. So there will be new careers, new jobs, new capabilities appearing. Traditional silos between data might erode, and it will create new capabilities for people that are digitally or machine literate that can use technology to create brand new roles, which will be far in excess of the roles that were actually removed. But the problem is they may get removed and it may take some time for new ones to start appearing. So there is an issue around certain jobs being replaced, and there's already examples of it. There's examples in Sheffield of firms minimizing the creative roles in digital employees because they can replace certain tasks with AI already. So there are examples of this starting to appear, but what it's doing is it's increasing the productivity of those firms and creating new roles elsewhere. So there are many new jobs being created off the back of productivity improvement, but it might not be quite the same job. So there is a risk here to certain individuals and certain professions, and it is hard to manage. And it is something that you do have to manage quite carefully with staff. But at the end of the day, you have to work out what's the right thing for the business and what's the right thing for creating long-term and overall jobs. Carl, you may have a different view here.
Sorry, no, I don't have a different view. I guess I'm just trying to think what that means for colleges, universities, and providers. And I guess it comes down to workforce resilience, doesn't it? So when we are doing those training, the designers need to think about how different roles are changing and what that means for reskilling and adapting the workforce so that some of those more repetitive tasks and the new tasks that they're doing, that we can manage that within the workforce. So, there is a role, isn't there, for sort of routine adult learning and upskilling of the workforce and CPD for helping build people's confidence and resilience, I guess, in terms of managing some of that change.
Absolutely.
So that they're more prepared and can take on different roles and become more in control of their destiny, and that might overcome some of the the reticence that we've heard from people.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sian, you had your hand up.
Go,
Sorry,
Sian.
Louisa, go on.
All right, yeah.
No, I think Louisa was going to come in and say that we're probably out of time. Was that what you were going to say, Louisa?
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's no more, final comment, on Carl's point was just, lifelong learning mindset. We say it all the time, and everyone on this call will be a huge advocate for that. We constantly need to be in that mindset. But yeah, we do need to draw things to a close because it's been a fantastic conversation, and I wanted to say how grateful I am to Carl and Jack for the time in preparing this report and sharing the insights with us all. And Dr. Sam Chapman, just fantastic insight. Hugely grateful to you for that. I'm going to pass over to Sian. I've just seen, yes, very much so. She's just popped a good prompt in the chat to encourage everybody to do the quarterly economic survey. But I'll just hand over to Sian so she can just talk us through next steps and the next session. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's been really interesting. So I'll put a couple of links in the chat if you hadn't seen them already. So you can click through on Doncaster Chamber's website and have a look at all our sector reports, all our webinars. Indeed, today's webinar will be published on there as well. There's also a link to book through Sheffield Chambers, the next webinar. So it's not far away. It's on the 24th of September. So if you've got busy diaries, please do get it booked in now. And that will be on veterans, as Carl's already said, and the role they they can play in the workforce. And yeah, lastly, please do take part in the economic survey, because that data goes direct to Whitehall. It's our link to decision makers and making sure that South Yorkshire's voice is heard loud and clear on the national stage. And so we need to make sure we've got a massive sample there of local business sentiment that says what are the important issues that's going on here. So please do fill it in if you're a business. But that's it, other than say thank you very much for joining the call and for continuing to participate in this project. It's significant for South Yorkshire that we make sure that we've got the skills to match our aspirational economy that's ready for growth. Thanks, everybody. Bye.